Hello, my name is John, a 50-year-old man working in the transportation industry. Because of my job, I'm often away from home. I have a high school age son and a wife who is the same age as me. Honestly, sharing my story today makes my hands tremble and my heart race with shame and devastation. Still, I hope that my experience might help others who have suffered the pain of betrayal from a spouse they trusted. My first encounter with my wife was somewhat special. One evening on my way home from work, I witnessed a scene that stuck with me. An elderly woman, hunched over from age, was struggling to push a cart loaded with scrap paper. Walking beside her was a young woman, my future wife, helping the elderly lady push the cart while speaking to her gently. I paused, unable to look away. A few moments later, the young woman helped the elderly lady push the cart all the way to the end of the alley. Then she went into a nearby convenience store and came out with a bag full of items: milk, bread, and canned nutritional drinks. Handing a drink to the elderly woman, she said in a warm, soft voice, "Take a break and have this. Don't overwork yourself." I'll never forget the look on the elderly woman's face as she held my wife's hand, tearfully expressing her gratitude. That scene left such a deep impression on me that I couldn't get it out of my mind for days. Our paths crossed again by chance when I saw her at that same convenience store. Gathering my courage, I approached her cautiously and asked, "Excuse me, weren't you the one helping the elderly lady the other day?" Her eyes widened in surprise, but then she smiled shyly and said, "Oh, you saw that? It's a bit embarrassing, honestly." Her modest reaction made me smile as well, and we began chatting naturally. Eventually, we exchanged contact information and started seeing each other. Later, she told me the reason she helped the elderly woman was more than just kindness. As a child, both her parents worked full time, so she was raised by her grandmother. "Thanks to my grandmother, I never felt lonely growing up," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. Hearing her story made me realize just how warm-hearted and compassionate she was. That warmth and compassion were evident throughout our relationship and continued into our marriage. Even while working a full-time job, she always prioritized our family. After our son was born, she devoted herself even more to caring for our home. Despite my long haul trucking schedule that kept me away from home for days at a time, she kept the house spotless and raised our son with love and dedication. Whenever I returned home, she would always prepare a nourishing meal. "You must be exhausted at this and get your strength back," she'd say, wiping the sweat from my brow with a handkerchief. Her care and concern filled me with gratitude and guilt for not being home more often. Even on days when my body ached from long hours on the road, a warm bowl of soup she had prepared could melt away my fatigue. I wanted to show my appreciation, so I helped with household chores whenever I had time off. I took care of the dishes, cleaned the house, and when our son was young, I took him to the playground or on walks so my wife could have some time to herself. Once our son started elementary school, I helped him with homework and attended school events to ease my wife's burden. "I feel so supported when you help around the house and take care of our son," she once told me with a smile. Hearing those words made me feel proud and grateful. Together, we built a home filled with mutual respect and love. Life felt peaceful and happy, and I believed we were a family that truly supported one another. Even now, with our son in high school, I still believed we were a strong, loving family. My wife and I did our best to provide for our family, often saying to each other, "Life is good just the way it is." Sure, we had occasional arguments, but they were nothing more than minor bumps in the road. I never imagined that our peaceful life would come crashing down. It all began with a seemingly insignificant moment. One weekend, after vacuuming the house, I was emptying the dustbin into a trash bag in the utility room when I noticed something pink inside the bag. Curiosity piqued, I reached in and pulled it out. The moment I realized what it was, my heart plummeted. It was a used condom tied at the top with a yellowish liquid cement clearly visible inside. My mind went blank and my hands began to shake. My pulse pounded in my ears as nausea swelled in my chest. Why is this here? I rubbed my eyes, hoping I was imagining things. My first thought was of my teenage son. Perhaps driven by curiosity, he had used it alone. But the idea didn't make sense. Why would he use a condom in the first place? And why dispose of it in the family's utility room trash bag? Moreover, my wife and I hadn't used condoms in years. In fact, our intimate life had dwindled to maybe once a month, if that. There was no reason for us to have condoms in the house. Though I couldn't be certain, I knew I couldn't ignore what I'd found. I took a photo of the condom as evidence and placed it in a separate bag, hiding it away. As I tied up the trash bag, my hands trembled uncontrollably. From that day on, everything seemed suspicious. My wife's behavior, which I had previously overlooked, now seemed secretive. I began noticing how she always took her phone into the bathroom when she showered. I had never thought twice about it before, but now it fueled my growing doubts. I tried to check her phone whenever I had the chance, but she had changed the lock screen pattern and passcode. Even that small change felt like a glaring red flag. I started watching her closely. Her every move seemed to confirm my suspicions. At home, she rarely put her phone down during conversations, and when I approached her, she would quickly turn off the screen. Anger simmered inside me, but without proof, I held my tongue. One day, I managed to catch a glimpse of her entering her passcode and memorized it. I hesitated for a long time, holding her phone in my hands. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm imagining things? But my fingers moved on their own. As I unlocked the phone, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. My fingers felt clammy with sweat, and my chest grew heavy with anticipation. The messages I found confirmed my worst fears. A long exchange of texts with another man revealed messages that were impossible to misinterpret. I miss you so much. Do it to me like last time. Sleeping with you felt amazing. I've never felt like this before. I wish I could hold you right now. Come over, please. Each message hit me like a physical blow. My hands trembled as I scrolled further, unable to stop myself. Then I found the photos' explicit images of their bodies exchanged in confidence. The woman in those photos was my wife. But her face, her expression, it was a side of her I had never seen, a side I couldn't comprehend. And the man she was texting, he was the college-age son of our neighbors who lived directly across the hall. I blinked several times, rereading the messages to be sure. There was no mistake. Our apartment complex had a stairwell design that meant we often crossed paths with the family across the hall, exchanging polite greetings in the elevator or hallway. I had never thought much of them. The father was a middle-aged man a few years older than me, living with his wife and their son. I had seen the young man a few times, once in his military reserve uniform, and another time when I had warned him not to smoke near the building entrance. I never imagined that someone I regarded as a mere neighbor would be the person who shattered my life. He and my wife using the time I was away to do this? The thought wouldn't leave my mind. The betrayal, humiliation, and rage I felt were beyond words. To think that these acts had occurred in my own home on the same sofa, where I sat after long days of driving, in the bedroom where I lay next to my wife, unaware of the betrayal taking place within those walls. What did that kid think every time he saw me? How could my wife look me in the eye and smile while hiding this secret? And what if my son ever found out? The thought of my son discovering his mother's actions, the shame and pain it would bring him, was almost too much to bear. I set the phone down, my hands still shaking. My legs gave out and I collapsed onto the floor. It felt as if a heavy weight was crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. My mind raced with images of what must have happened in my absence. That night I lay beside my wife in bed, saying nothing. She fell asleep, unaware of the storm raging inside me. I watched her back as she slept, struggling to reconcile the woman beside me with the woman I had seen in those messages. She was the person I had loved for so many years, yet now she felt like a stranger. Another thought crept into my mind, making my stomach churn. For months, my wife had shown little interest in intimacy, often claiming she was tired or not feeling well. Lately, she had even started saying it was too much trouble. I had assumed she was simply stressed or exhausted. But now I wondered, had she been rejecting me because of her affair with the boy across the hall? For a brief moment, I wanted to storm across the hall, pound on their door, and beat the truth out of that boy. My fists clenched involuntarily, my pulse hammering in my veins. But as my anger cooled, I realized violence wouldn't solve anything. I needed to confront my wife first to hear the truth from her own lips. A few days later, while my son was out, I asked my wife to sit with me in the living room. My voice was calm, but my heart pounded as I asked, "Is there anything you need to tell me?" Her brow furrowed slightly. "What are you talking about? Did something happen?" Her expression was so natural as if nothing had happened, which only fueled my anger. "I know everything. Stop hiding it." Her face stiffened. She blinked rapidly, her hands clenching the hem of her shirt, but she still tried to feign ignorance. "I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about?" I couldn't hold back any longer. The condom, the text messages. I saw it all. The moment those words left my mouth, her face drained of color. Her lips trembled as tears welled up in her eyes. She lowered her head, shoulders shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." But her tears only stoked my anger. I couldn't feel any sincerity in her apology. Through her tears, she tried to explain. It wasn't love. It was just a mistake that got out of hand. We had an argument and he happened to be there. I know it was wrong. I'll never do it again. Please forgive me. Her words only echoed the text messages I had read. "I miss you. Come hold me." And the explicit photos flashed through my mind. If it wasn't love, how could they have exchanged such intimate words and images? But there was one more thing I needed to know. One word I had seen in the text kept haunting me: pregnancy. "Did you ever get pregnant? Was it his child?" Her face twisted in anguish, and the silence that followed was louder than any confession. My pulse pounded in my ears as I took a step closer. "Tell me the truth. I read the messages. I know what I saw. Is it true?" After a long pause, she exhaled shakily and nodded. "Yes, but it's over. I took care of it. I didn't want to hurt you or our son." I staggered back as if physically struck. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to process what I had just heard. She had been pregnant with another man's child, conceived during my time away, and had ended the pregnancy without my knowledge. Her sobs filled the silence, but I couldn't hear them. My mind was consumed with images of betrayal and deceit. The walls of our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison filled with shadows of her infidelity. I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. With a deep breath, I steadied my voice and said, "Pack your things and go to your parents' house. You can't stay here anymore." "No, please give me another chance. I'll do anything to make this right. I love you. Please don't throw this away." She clung to my arm, but I pulled away, unable to feel anything but cold, hollow anger. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the weight of her betrayal pressed down on my chest. My mind wrestled with the decision ahead. Should I divorce her and end this nightmare? Or should I stay for the sake of my son? A few days later, I made my decision. I gathered all the evidence, the text messages, photos, and the condo man went to the neighbor's apartment. With the entire family present, I laid everything out before them. Your son has destroyed my family. He had an affair with my wife. Their faces paled. The parents gasped in shock, denying the possibility. But when I mentioned the text messages, photos, and used condom, their son fell to his knees. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. His voice trembled as tears streamed down his face. His parents clutched their heads in disbelief, the mother sobbing uncontrollably. But their grief meant nothing to me. My voice remained cold and firm as I delivered my final warning. If you don't move out immediately, I'll report this to his university. And when he graduates and applies for jobs, I'll make sure his employers know what he did. He'll live with the consequences of breaking up a family for the rest of his life. The parents dropped to their knees begging for mercy. We'll put the apartment up for sale right away. Please just give us a chance to fix this. But I turned and walked away without another word. As I returned home, my steps felt heavy. Even though I had confronted them, the weight in my chest didn't lift. What if they didn't move out? What if they continued seeing each other when I was away? The thought made my stomach churn. I stopped eating and barely slept. My mind kept replaying the betrayal, my wife's actions, the young man's smirk when he passed me in the hallway, and the texts that haunted my thoughts. My wife still begs for forgiveness, swearing it was a momentary lapse and that she wants to stay by my side. But her words sound like empty excuses. Should I forgive her and try to rebuild our marriage? Or should I listen to the anger in my heart and walk away? I don't know what the future holds. But one thing is certain, I can't continue living like this. Maybe by sharing my story, I'm hoping to hear the advice I need to make my final decision.